Whoa, that's a fucking sword.
Hell yeah.
I'm not a sword. You're not a sword.
We'll keep her
Well,
handy.
everybody, welcome back to Building a Fighter. My name is Dr. Austin Schoen, sports chiropractor in Scottsdale, Arizona. With me, as always, badass strength coach and part-time samurai,
With a
I guess,
sword. Yeah, with a sword.
Alex Friedman. Today, we're going to be talking about what you need to do from a fitness standpoint if you are a recreational roller over the age of really 35, 40. But as you start to go through and away from competition, but still love to do combat sports, what is most important in your fitness routine? Because here's the key here. You need one. You can't just
Yeah.
roll. That's not going to be good enough. So, Alex, what's priority number one when it comes to as we phase out of competition and into rolling for longevity? What do we need to focus on the fitness side?
Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, and this is something we're going off script a little bit with, but it's the consistency, or it's a dedication to a routine, right? It's not a concern if you don't have a routine, right? So
Right.
what you're saying is we need to either prioritize some of our health and like orthopedic well-being, and prioritizing maybe means you add a third lift in the week instead of the third open mat of a week.
Bro, it starts with one lift.
Yeah, right. So, or creating a fitness routine if you're not into one, right?
Yeah.
Because you can get away with just rolling at a high intensity and go. I mean, fuck, I did it last week. I went to 3 open mats and no strength and conditioning, right? Like you can get away with that shit when you're 29, right? You can get away with that shit when a lot of people are like 22 doing that shit. But
those are the people that keep my business open, because those are the people that I have to fix all the time.
Exactly. It's not a strategy for longevity, right? Which if we're getting up there to 35, 40 masters level athletes, we are trending more towards longevity, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're not anymore really pursuing the performance aspect of the sport. And so within that, we need to consciously make decisions to prioritize our health and longevity and time on the mat versus spending more time away from the mat than on, which happens all the time.
For sure. In my head, it comes down to, why are you doing it, right? Why are you doing Jiu Jitsu in the first place? Why are you doing kickboxing in the first place? Right. Well, I don't know many people that are wrestling at 40, but why are you doing combat sports in the first place? And a lot of it's because of passion. Well, if you're passionate about something, you should want to do that thing for as long as you can. What's the best way to do that thing, whichever combat sport it is, for as long as you can? Be as quote unquote bulletproof as possible. Try to fine tune and sure up all of your chinks in your armor or your weaknesses so that you decrease the risk of injury. We know the risk of injury is always going to be there, but we can mitigate certain things that should help you get injured less. And a lot of it comes down to putting in a fitness routine, like Alex is saying.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, within that fitness routine too, like when you start off initially, it'll probably be hard work. It'll be really hard work to maintain that habit and to make gains, right? To get strong the first time is really hard. To be, powerful or coordinated or this or that balanced the first time is really hard. But once you put in that work, it's a lot easier to maintain.
I'd also like to say that do not go too hard too fast.
Okay.
This is a textbook combat athlete issue where you think because you roll 4 times a week that you can decide to go do a deadlift that you used to do when you were 20.
Mm-mm.
Again, people that keep my business open. So what I need you to do is start slow. If you haven't lifted in 10 years, you've only been doing combat sports, you're functionally strong, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you don't have the technical proficiency to jump back into lifting heavy weight. There's a certain reason why we do muscular endurance first. Don't just jump back into 7 sets of 3 trying to hit at 90%. We want to build our muscular endurance. We want to build our aerobic capacity. Then we want to move into our strength. And we want to move into our plyos. There's a sequence with which we want to do things. And just because in your head, because you roll all the time, that you're fit, you are fit for combat sports, but that doesn't translate into the weight room. And we need to respect it just like we respect combat sports.
Yeah, and I think the second tip of like really practical advice for this is hire a professional. Building a Fighter, we have a lot of programs readily available online if you don't want to shell out the money or see somebody one-on-one in person. But seeing somebody one-on-one in person or by one of our programs, right, gives you that guide. So you don't have to go figure it out by yourself and make the mistakes and cost yourself the time that you already have limitedly, right? And so I guess practical tip number one is like seek out some help, seek out a mentor, seek out, somebody that's knowledgeable in the space, not just your roided out buddy who lifts, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Right. Because again, they're going to jump into shit that they do, which is not anything you're prepared for. Right. And maybe not even the best thing for jiu-jitsu or maintaining your health, just what they do to stay jacked. So seek somebody out for some help and create a program. And we're going to get into some of the like more technical things that are involved in your program. And these are things that, again, you have a routine maintained that you can add in or they can really highlight and that we highlight in some of our programs like our Jiu-Jitsu Wellness program, which is this to a T.
Well, let's start with how many days a week do you think need to be dedicated to have a fitness routine? How many days a week do they need to be lifting?
I think 2 is a minimum. 2 is a really good minimum, and it's like an easy entry point and a enough to maintain, right? You want to start making gains. We're talking 3 or 4.
Yep.
But I think 2 is the most like consistent schedule. Like I don't need to set PRs in the weight room, but I need to make sure my body's oiled and moving efficiently. I think you're going to accomplish that with 2 days in the weight room.
For sure. And I think that's a good place to start. If you start at 4, you're going to A, burn yourself out, and probably B, push past the capacity that you already have. Amen. Right? If we start with 2, we do that for a month or 2 and work our way up to 2 to 3 to even 4 if you want to. That's a great progression forwards. But if we start at 4 and then we have to scale back to do, guess what? You're probably not going to be in the weight room more than 5 months because you're going to get bored or injured.
Yeah, and I think 2 is a good like dose relationship to where we can go hard enough that you feel like you got a good workout, but it's not going to crush you the entire week or create some of those like residual training effects that are soreness and that are overtraining type of stuff. Like 4 days a week, you do that 1 week, you're going to be feeling it on a Saturday the next week and things like this. We add in a 2-day week schedule, you're going to feel a little bit, but it's not enough to, like Austin saying, discourage you from coming back next week.
Right. 100%. So where we're talking with the qualities that we need to start training, I want to start with the one that I think has the most carryover as we age and as a general wellness standpoint, and that's going to be our aerobic capacity. Mm-hmm. This is on the tails of us talking about our Mastering MMA Conditioning podcast. If you want to do a deep dive into aerobic capacity, that's going to be in that podcast. This is going to be a brief overview. But what aerobic capacity is it's trying to make our heart work more efficiently. It's building a bigger engine and also becoming more fuel efficient all at once. So the main point of what it's going to do is it's going to increase our left ventricular hypertrophy, which all that does is it helps pump more blood out to the rest of your system and help us recover, as well as keep our system as functional as possible. How do we do this? Well, how do we do aerobic capacity? That's going to be I would start at 25, 30 minutes of consistent exercise as a low intensity. This is the number one thing that combat athletes fuck up, especially when you're 35 to 40, because you think everything has to be 100% because you're hard. Well, guess what? You should actually be doing it at a low intensity because that's more efficient for you. It trains the system in a different way that you're not getting in combat sports. And it's basically making you slow down and making you focus on a weakness that almost every combat athlete as they age has, because they don't focus on it when they're younger.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think being able to scale yourself and implement that is another high priority, because a lot of times injuries happen when we get fatigued, right? You don't have the capacity, you don't have the like sharpness, or you start to go for desperation things when you get super tired. Right. And so establishing this will, help you put your training at a higher level overall in the general sense. It'll help you stay a little bit more like with a little reduced risk of injury is how I want to say that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's also one of the easiest things to start implementing into your system. It can be any conditioning modality you want. It can be swimming, biking, running, jump roping for 30 minutes would be rough. But don't do that one. That's a shin splint waiting to happen. But It could be running outside, running on the treadmill, the elliptical, the stair climber, anything you want to do. It could be shadow wrestling. It could be hitting the bag.
It could be, yeah, it could be flow rolling. Like I see a lot of people doing this with like some flow rolling. You have to be at a pretty advanced state, right? To
Yeah,
not go super hard, but to flow roll. If like jujitsu is really genuinely the only thing that interests you, which I know a lot of people like this, that they
for
have no
sure.
interest in lifting or getting in the weight room or doing that, as like jujitsu genuinely is the only thing. Do 45 minutes of drilling, but make it at a conscious effort to continue at a like a jogging type of pace, right? Wear a heart rate monitor maybe, or just chronically make yourself move rather than provide resistance and intensity.
Right, or break all the rules and talk to your partner as you're going.
Yeah.
If you can have paragraphs as you go and you're like cheering on the other dude or you're just bullshitting as you go, I
Mhm.
guarantee you're at the right intensity. If you can only say good job, then I promise you're going too hard,
Yeah.
right? So whether it's a heart rate strap, but I know those fall off when we're grappling all the time, right? So make sure that you're doing it at a comfortable pace if you pick a sport specific modality. But in general, you're going to start at 25, 30 minutes. You're going to do that once to twice a week, and you're going to progress yourself up to 30, 40, 50, 60. Really, it's all the way up to 90 minutes. But I don't know a lot of people that aren't professional athletes that do 90 minutes. Typically, they stay between the 35 to 45-minute range right there. That's where the golden zone of aerobic capacity is if you do it twice a week, where we can get the added benefits as we go. So throwing that in, it's a very low cost because you can go run outside for free.
Mhm. For
And then you can go
free.
right into all of your different training as you go. So, Alex, what as we go through aerobic capacity, what's the next thing that is kind of a mainstay when it comes to training fitness 35
Yeah.
and up?
Yeah. I think maintaining strength is huge, or building strength if you don't have it, right? Like
Yeah.
pure strength, meaning something like a weight that you can lift correctly with really good technique, like 5 times, right? Your basic strength level, we can maintain that or increase that. That's going to do nothing but help the tendons, the ligaments, your muscles work in a more coherent fashion, aka give you more biomotor availability and better stability, but then also allow your body to, I guess, be more bulletproof in a sense.
Mm-hmm. The trying to, and especially strengthening certain areas as well, right?
Yeah.
Like strengthening the hips, for example. We know one of the biggest things as we age and we go through, it's not about preparing for 70, but it kind of is as we get
Yeah.
away from the preparation or we get away from the competition phase into the longevity phase. It's about how do I do basic function and keep my quality of life as high as possible. Otherwise, like, why are you training? You would just be rolling as much as you can because you like jujitsu way more. You're doing strength and conditioning for a purpose. And that
Yeah.
purpose is to keep your body functioning at the highest level possible. So, strengthening the hips, strengthening the shoulders, strengthening the spine, which is an extremely undervalued place to add strength and conditioning to as you age. Nobody wants to do neck strength, but guess what?
Yeah.
Some of the strongest necks are the one for the people that have the best lives as they age, right? And they're allowed to stay on the mat as long as they can because the older you are, the more likelihood you're going to have stenotic changes. The more stenotic changes, typically the more nerve issues you have, and boom, you get that stinger way easier when you're 50 than you do when you're 25.
Yeah, and when I think about that, I think a lot of like core strength, but core strength in a smarter, more integrated fashion, right? We're doing core strength via farmer carries. We're doing core strength via our trap bar deadlifts, right? Our dead bugs, our things like this is one thing that I really harp on, and this is probably where I make the biggest impact in a lot of my clients' lives is I don't just make them strong.
Ooh, Mr. Important over here, making
Big
big
guy,
impacts in people's lives.
big guy, huge important. But the thing is, I don't just make them stronger, right? Getting stronger is one thing, and that's like your bare bones job as a strength coach, right?
Yeah.
That's for sure. I teach them how to move really well and then be strong through that movement, right? And so this is something I think we really need to address with the aging population, with our masters athletes, is like, let's clean up some of that movement. Let's
Mhm.
help you get through a good, healthy, full range of motion. And then all of a sudden, those little aches and pains you've been having for 10 years that you just ignore start to go away because we're opening up some range of motion, because we're getting stronger in the end ranges that you didn't even know you had access to, or you
Right.
may not have had access to. So some of those smaller things like core stability, trap bar deadlift, going through a lunge, right? Like how many people can do a lunge really well, right? If you ask them point blank, right? And so getting good at those really basic, simple things are, I think, the way to bulletproof yourself or to give yourself less pain and more time on the mats.
100%. And this is also where we can add in, we've talked a few times on the podcast about like direct mobility sessions aren't needed. But these are sometimes the way that people get into enjoying strength and conditioning, because as we get to this population, making your body feels good is a priority.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually probably the main priority for lifting for your sport. So doing things, as long as it's not exclusively just mobility all the time, adding in 15, 20, 30-minute mobility sessions here and there, it's the sprinkles on the top that gets people into the weight room more and allow them to feel good as we start to make these adaptations. So while my professional athletes, I try to steer them away from targeted mobility sessions because, in all honesty, that's just one more thing to add to their plate when they already have too many workouts in general. Where we're talking about our recreational or our masters athletes, I'm okay with that because it makes their body feel better. And at the end of the day, that's what they're training for, to do their sport as long as they can, make their body feel as good as possible.
Yeah. And I mean, if it's done really well, you don't need a whole mobility session, right? You can integrate a lot of your mobility, a lot of your core strength, a lot of everything within one session, and we'll call it strength work, right? Like a trap bar deadlift is a really good example, right? Some of my masters athletes, I have them on an elevated trap bar deadlift, right? A gain for them might not be putting 20, 30 pounds on the bar. The gain for them is to get the trap bar deadlift off the floor without pain, without adverse consequences, right? So, or have your knee actually touch the ground on a lunge, right? So like small things like that. And again, without getting into like a professional population, I think that those are worthy goals. Those are things that are should be strove for, and you can make gains in the mobility and the strength and the aerobic capacity kind of all at the same time with our masters athletes.
Yeah, it's cool because like a mentor of mine, like he always says, like one of his main things he says at the courses that we go to or that we help with are like, you need to give them what they want in the context of what they need. Well, what they need is strength. We know that these athletes, they should be trap bar deadlifting. We know they should be doing X, Y, and Z. But if we pair them with something what they want, we bring whatever there is, say they come to you and they have back pain. If you can show them movements that get them out of back pain, and oh, by the way, we're also going to strengthen it and do a full-on deadlift, sumo deadlift, so that it becomes less and less prevalent. But they don't understand that, oh, the sumo deadlift is actually going to be what actually does the keeping away of, or the prevention of the back pain. They think the prone press up is what's allowing them to get through the rest of life, where in reality, we're pairing a prone press up or a cobra from yoga with a trap bar deadlift or a sumo deadlift, because the prone press up is what they want. The sumo deadlift is what they need.
Yeah, 100%. And like, again, a lot of people think of like the strength work, that's just the work, right? I just got to do that, whatever. But that really is the main preventative thing, or the main thing that creates a stable structure, which is your body, or this more robust type of structure.
No, there's no way around it, unfortunately. I said this recently. I'm like, look, hey, if I got a magic pill, I would give it to you. You think I'm holding out on you? No, like this takes work. There's no way to cheat the system. If I could make a magic video, I would be a billionaire, but I'm not, so there isn't.
Yeah, right. True. Next quality, next thing that we're always including in our jiu-jitsu, kind of maintaining the fitness for our masters athletes. Austin,
the jumpy jumpies.
The jumpy jumpies. What's a jumpy?
The plyometrics.
Okay.
We believe that plyometrics are. Oh, I'm gonna explain, dude. I got you.
I know.
I've been podcasting a minute. No, we believe plyometrics should be a mainstay as we go through a master's athlete or jiu-jitsu. And it's not, we keep saying jiu-jitsu because it's the most prevalent sport as we get into the master's level, right? Yeah. This is for everything. And honestly, plyometrics matter more if you're 35 up doing kickboxing or boxing, because you are bouncing a little bit more.
Amen.
But plyometrics are crucial, and they don't need to be a 55-inch box jump, which technically isn't a plyometric anyways, but I'm not going to argue with that. But we need to be able to train our spring system, because as we age, We need to be able to make rapid changes or rapid stability. Well, what's one of the best ways to train that rapid stability? Be able to control our stretch shortening cycle or our plyometric cycle, and be able to step our foot as fast as possible in a direction that is safe and effective. Okay,
Yep.
so that's rule number one. Rule number two, any combat sport at all has some sort of explosive movement involved in it. Whether you're playing guard, you're going for a sweep. Whether you're kickboxing and you're going through a 1-3 high kick. Whether you're, which that'd be a dope ass combo, by the way. If you could throw that, kudos.
Yeah,
I know. I see you thinking about it.
that'd be quite the reach.
I see you thinking about it. That would be impressive. It's almost like the Robert Whittaker, that 1-2 high kick that follows up the 2. Anyways, off
the
topic.
Reaper.
But who's fighting this weekend, by the way? Anyways, if you're doing any sort of plyometrics, we need to be able to train our ankles, our feet, and our entire system to control that force and get as rigid as possible, as fast as possible. And that's why it's so important. Because in combat sports, we do it all the time, but also in life, we do it all the time. And we're training for both of those contexts.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's worth noting, and like when you first learn this, when I first learned this, kind of blew my mind, right? We think about like core training, you're going to do a plank, you're doing sit-ups. We think about like creating stability in a dead bug or a hollow hold, right? Doing a plyometric jump or doing a heavy trap bar deadlift begets you a lot more activation at a way higher yield than any of those type of core quote unquote movements, right? Like this plyometric jump, this instant stability that Austin's talking about, this happens at such a high output and you don't feel it because it's a fraction of a second, right? But that happens at such a higher output than the 5-minute plank that you bragged to all your friends that you can do.
Yeah.
Right.
What's the difference between doing a high intensity movement in a short duration or a medium intensity movement in a long duration? They both need to be trained, but what Alex and what I am probably arguing is the first one is probably more important than the second one.
Yeah, it gives you a bigger training effect because it's a bigger stimulus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we talk about training power with our masters athletes, like the neuroplasticity and the ability to control the stress shortening cycle, I think is super important. That's like one of the biggest things that allows us to keep going and not get hurt or not lose that step as you get older in the sport. And then the other thing that I really think it helps with is bone mineral density, right? Like the strength will help with that. The ground contact time will help with that. And even little things as far as like breaking toes and breaking, feet as you go through in a jiu-jitsu life, right? That shit helps. And so a lot of these little errant bumps and bruises that are going to happen regardless, one, we can start to reduce the risk of them, but two, we can drastically reduce your time off the mat if we're already prepped for them.
Alex, you just whipped out big words. For the people at home, what's bone mineral density?
Oh, God. How thick your bones are. How strong are your bones? Are you drinking that milk? You getting that vitamin D?
You drinking that milk or nah?
Or nah, bro.
No, he's 100% right. There's a law in, really it's physics, but in biomechanics called Wolff's Law, right? Where the more stress you put on top of a bone, the thicker it's going to get, or the more dense it's going to get. It's typically trained in strength, but we also can see, because power is just strength times speed. So guess what? Power does it as well. Being able to maximize our power output allows our Wolff's Law to increase, which as we go through the rest of life, once we get, I believe that number's 52, our Wolff's Law stops working as well. So right when we get to like 50, 52, it actually starts to decrease the ability to add to that bone density by a substantial amount. That's when it gets clinically significant. So making sure that we jump on that as we get into the master's class, not at the end of master's class, allows us to be as strong as possible and prep our system for the future, which I keep harping on, even though that's not what you want to think about. That's really what you're doing by doing these different training systems.
100%. No, I think,
okay. Well, I want to talk about like power, because one of the more underrated things is it makes you feel like an athlete again.
Yeah, sure.
Like doing a landmine split jerk makes you feel like an athlete. Doing plyometric movements, like I program for a guy. I've been programmed for about a year. He's a local guy, big business, and we started with literally just muscular endurance tree, worked our way down to strength, worked our way into plyos. Well, I noticed that he was starting to leave way more comments, and he started to feel better because I see him in person too. He started to feel better when he came into the clinic. He started to like be happier when he came into the clinic. And I finally asked him one day, like it was probably on the third month of introducing like power and plyometrics into his program. So about 5 months into the training system. And he's like, dude, I just feel like an athlete again. I miss this. I haven't felt like an athlete probably since I was 20. And that's such an underrated part of training is the psychologic stimulus you get of feeling like you're younger, even if your body doesn't necessarily always feel like it. But while you're training, feeling like you're younger again is such a psychologic benefit that it makes you happier in the rest of life.
Oh, I totally agree. And I think it's encapsulated in a lot of what you said. But like when you brought up this topic to do a podcast on, I'm like, man, not that much honestly changes. Right. Yeah. We prioritize here and there about the aerobic capacity, the strength, some of the power, but like I'm checking those boxes with my youth athletes, with my professional athletes, with anybody else. Right. Maybe I'm emphasizing them a little more, but not that much. Like good training is still just good training. Right.
I'm still hitting the primal patterns. I'm still hitting power. I'm still in the qualities. I'm still hitting basically everything. It more or less, I would recommend taking a little bit more time off to recover in between. Yeah. So giving yourself more time to adapt to the stimulus you're putting on, because we know we adapt at a slower rate every year of age.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, the only other thing is like, just be more conscious of what you're doing from a recovery standpoint as well. We know we adapt slower. So how do we maximize the recovery sides of things? Eat correctly, sleep a lot. Like you're not a professional athlete. You don't need to work out 7.5 days a week. It's okay to only roll 3 times and lift twice. That's 100% okay for everybody.
Which, yeah, a lot of the masters athletes that I've worked with and I've had the privilege of rolling with or being mentored by is like, I think they do get a lot of this consistency down better than the younger athletes, right? They do prioritize, or they have the time and energy to prioritize like recovery and then like knowing their limits, right? Because, they've been there before. It's like, I've hurt my back off of, 3 jiu-jitsu practices in a day, right?
Right.
We don't need that. And I think a lot of times those like priorities around recovery and knowing your limits are there a lot more, but it's like, we're still searching for how can we do this thing a little bit smarter, and training with your fitness schedule, with your strength and conditioning, getting actually in the weight room is definitely a way that you can be smarter about this.
100%. And so I would say those are our basics in the things that we would emphasize for master's level MMA, master's level jiu-jitsu, master's level kickboxing athletes. Do you have any other qualities that you'd focus on?
No, I think that's it. I think you talked about a couple of the ancillary ones as far as like training your spine and getting really strong through your axial skeleton, and then doing some neck training, grip training is some of the stuff.
Yeah, grip training, that's a big one.
I would add in a little bit, but again, those are kind of ancillary to, can you do the meat and potatoes of what we've already talked about? And then you can, we've gone off on grip training, I think on like half a podcast.
Right. Well, a full podcast. I think we did a full podcast on grip training.
Oh boy. Yeah. So go search that one if you want to hear about grip training.
Look it up in the old Spotify index. I do want to send a shout out to, I believe Belinda Wilson was the one that sent us an email asking us about this topic. So Thank you, because I think it was a fantastic suggestion. This is something we haven't talked about much. And I know actually a lot of our listeners, I can see the demographics. I know the age ranges, and a lot of people are actually in the age ranges that we're talking about. So thanks for recommending it, because it's something that we don't always think about, and it was an awesome suggestion.
Oh yeah.
So outside of that, if you guys are looking for strength and conditioning, you're looking for us to help you guys with adding strength and conditioning into your routine, whether you're an individual or a team, if you're a coach, we're happy to help. All that's available at buildingupfighter.com. We have custom, preset, and membership options for you guys. If you have any questions on those, send us an email or head to the website. You can actually send us messages through the website now as well. Outside of that, this is Dr. Austin Schoen.
Alex Friedman.
And we are out. And just whipping that sword around.